Cheers, thank you. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Firstly, Paul, thanks very much for inviting me to speak here. It's truly an honor to be representing young financial planners at this event. Last year, I was sitting right there at the back, so thank you. It's also an honor to be speaking to a lot of you here in the room, the veteran lifestyle financial planners who I've learned so much from over these years. So thanks very much for answering my emails, answering my phone calls, and answering my Twitter messages. You guys and girls are fantastic. So my job here today is to tell you the story of a journey, of a transformative tale that took me from being an old school product salesman to becoming a lifestyle financial planner. It's the story that made me realize that lifestyle financial planning was the job I was nearly doing. It's going to take me about 20 minutes, and by the end of it, hopefully I will have illustrated the mindset shift I went through in my journey, and I'm going to leave you with 3 things for you to think about. Now, like you, I'm a practitioner, not a professional presenter, so please forgive me if I obviously mess up a little up here. But firstly, it'll be rude of me not to give you a bit of context as to why I'm here today. So as Paul said, my name is Amyr Rocha Lima. I'm a financial planner dealing mainly, or pretty much exclusively actually, with retirement planning clients in London and the Southeast. And you've probably noticed, actually that slide isn't up, so yeah, now you're probably noticing. I don't have the most Anglo-Saxon name in the world, so don't let my British accent fool you. In fact, I couldn't have been brought up any further from here. I'm originally from Brazil. Now, I know that sounds quite exotic, but I'm from the Brazilian Midwest, so trust me when I say it was more city slickers than girl from Ipanema. Growing up, I got to spend a lot of time at my family's farm, which was great fun. We mainly breed horses and raise cattle, and the great thing about going to the farm was that I got to spend a lot of time with this guy. Now, they say you should never meet your heroes, but in my case, I didn't get a choice, as mine was my grandfather. He was a great male role model. Physically and mentally, he was everything I wanted to be. He just seemed fearless. Even our birthdays were on the same day, actually. Grandpa Rocha Lima studied engineering at university, where he met a great girl, and after the graduation, they got married and started a family. Incidentally, that little guy there is my father. And he then went to work for the Brazilian Department of Agriculture. This took him right into the heartland of the Brazilian savannah, and he had some great stories to tell us about it. The other great thing about my grandfather is that he was absolutely passionate about his career. And from an early age, that got me thinking that one day I'd like to do something I was passionate about too. This is my family. Dad is an economist, Mum's a teacher. They provided my sister and I with a great upbringing, and one day they figured they would use their professional qualifications to create an international experience for the family by moving abroad, so that my sister and I could get an international education, and my parents in turn could further their careers. So we moved to Australia, and I got to spend my childhood in Brisbane. It was a great place to be a kid, phenomenal weather, a lot of emphasis on outdoor activities. And a few years into our move, my grandparents got to come over, and we got to do some traveling together, which was great fun. And eventually, of course, we moved back to Brazil, and my parents then sent me to the United States to complete my my senior year of high school. Now, if all that moving around wasn't enough, I then decided to come to the UK. And I remember exactly when that was. It was 2003, and I was 18 years old. And it was a big moment because, I was coming towards the end of my teens, and here I had this opportunity to do something really meaningful with my life. Because, of course, when you're a teenager, you've got everything figured out. Everything makes sense, and you know exactly what you want to do in life, right? Well, I knew exactly what I wanted to do when I arrived in the UK. I wanted to buy a Mini. Now, I had visions of being Michael Caine in The Italian Job, but as you can see, it was more like Mr. Bean. On a serious note, I was only too conscious that my teens were coming to an end, and that I needed to crack on with life. I got accepted into a good university, but at the time it just wasn't for me. I had hopes of being an actor. You know, in London there's plenty of film production, plenty of theatres in the West End, and that was fun, but I figured it was never going to be the stuff of a long-term career for me. So like a lot of us in the room today, I fell into financial services by complete accident. My mate ran the coffee shop inside that building there, AXA's head office in Bristol. And one day he said, "I hear AXA are hiring. Why don't you give me your CV and I'll hand it to their HR people when they next pop in for a coffee." Great career planning, right? So I went home and I did some research on this company called AXA, and I saw that it was huge. And I thought, surely I could find a career path inside this multinational company that did everything from fine art insurance to asset management. Anyway, somehow I got through the interview process, and a few days later, I got a call from the manager of the IFA support team, telling me that he wanted me to join his team. Now, let me stress that at the time, I didn't have a clue what a pension was, much less how investments worked. In fact, I didn't even know the financial planning profession existed. Interestingly, though, it didn't take long for me to see that I had found in financial services exactly what I was looking for. It was an exciting time in my life. I was fully immersed in my work. I was progressing through professional qualifications. I was hitting my sales targets. And I was even being mentored by one of the company's top performers. So much so that a year and a half later, I got promoted to their flagship office in London to become a broker consultant. In time, though, I started to feel that there was a limit as to how far I could go in AXA. If you've worked in product provider land before, you know what I'm talking about. You see, the great IFA accounts would only become available to me when a senior broker consultant either retired or left the company, and neither event happened very often. However, what I hadn't banked on was the fact that 2008 would bring with it one of the biggest financial crises in history. I was working in the city at the time, and I must admit that the atmosphere around me, coupled with the noise from the financial media, had somewhat shaken my confidence in the financial services sector. But the good news is, I survived the redundancy round, and I actually got to work with some of those top IFA firms. You see, although I didn't look senior enough to be dealing with important IFAs in London, my manager had seen the quality of my work, and he trusted me enough to give me a shot at it. And of course, the bigger the account, the bigger the target. And the bigger the target, the bigger the corporate entertainment budget too. So I got to do wine tasting with this guy, I got to get a cooking lesson with this guy, and I got to have a beer with this guy, which was all really good fun. But I couldn't help but feel that there was something missing from my career. You see, behind all of my achievements, all I was really doing was selling offshore bonds. Coupled with this, 2008 turned out to be the last year I would see my grandfather. That year, I went back to Brazil to spend Christmas and New Year's with my family, and I saw that this formidable man, who I described to you earlier, my hero, had been battling against a motor neuron disease. This is a cruel disease that slowly and painfully robs you of all your physical faculties. And over a period of 2 years, it robbed my grandfather of his ability to walk, of his ability to talk, and eventually robbed him of his life. I remember the last time I saw him really well. Just before heading to the airport to catch my flight back to the UK, the whole family was gathered at my grandparents' place, for me to say goodbye to everyone, of course. And everyone, including my grandfather and I, knew this would be the last time we would see each other. In our last goodbye, I gave him a hug and a kiss on the forehead, as the disease had debilitated him so much that he couldn't even lift his arm to shake my hand. These two events, the great financial crisis and the loss of my grandfather, had a huge impact on me. And on my return to the UK, I started questioning the value of my career. I started pondering on what good I was actually doing for my clients. By now, I fully realized I wanted to do something I was passionate about, and simply selling offshore bonds wasn't it. Some time went by, and I ended up leaving AXA to work for a company called MetLife. Now, your memory of them might be of some persistent salespeople trying to get a meeting with you in exchange for a plush Snoopy toy. But around 2010, 2011, we were actually doing some great work around behavioral finance in retirement planning. I'm really proud of the work I did there at the time, even though the end goal was still to just sell a product. And I got to work with this guy. Joe Jordan was a senior vice president at MetLife, and he was brought over to run some regional CPD seminars where his message was all about inspiring IFAs to live a life of significance. Joe spoke passionately about our profession's two unique abilities. First, that we can provide our clients with a lifestyle-sustaining income throughout retirement, which they won't outlive, so that they can maintain their independence. Second, that we can protect our clients' income, so that if they fall sick, they can still maintain their dignity. Dignity and independence. I really bought into that message. And I became passionate about getting the IFA firms I worked with to start positioning themselves this way to their clients. But again, in time, I had that feeling that something was missing. You see, I figured that I could do more meaningful work by cutting out the middleman and dealing directly with the client. And that middleman happened to be me. I was talking the talk, but I wanted to walk the walk. And on the lead up to RDR, my professional qualifications put me in a great position to discuss potential job opportunities with IFA firms. So I took the plunge, and I became a financial advisor on the 1st of January, 2013. Now, you know what they say, when opportunity knocks. Well, in my case, opportunity knocked in the form of a room stuffed with old client files. Looking at that now, actually, it does feel quite daunting, but I know that a lot of you have sort of been there and done that too. So I focused on the fact that a lot of those files were from group personal pension schemes that were no longer paying the firm any commission. And to get some initial traction, I went back to what I'd learned in my previous roles. I focused on retirement planning. And I started contacting the administrators of those schemes to arrange retirement planning clinics for their older employees. And once again, whilst perhaps I didn't quite look senior enough or old enough to be dealing in retirement planning, I explained my business plan to my boss, and he put his faith in my work. And it worked. I even had clients saying thank you for the work I did for them and their family. Now, don't get me wrong, this process was still very much geared towards a traditional IFA approach, matching a client's need to a product solution. But I now felt that I was actually helping the end client. And of course, along the way, I did encounter some age bias. But in hindsight, I think that's because I wasn't making it clear to clients that my job was about more than just selling them a product. I then came across this man. Oh, that's not the man I was talking about, but that's a weird old man. That man. Recognize him? Paul was running an online webinar where he demonstrated his bucket presentation and spoke about the 3 hats you wear as a lifestyle financial planner. Paul spoke passionately about restructuring the financial planning process so that you first talk to a client about their life. Then you use that information to build them their financial plan, and only then did you populate it with financial products. You see, life's not a rehearsal, Paul said. So your first job should be to help your client understand the lifestyle they want to achieve and maintain. Life, plan, products. I've never told you this before, Paul, but that webinar had a massive impact on me. You see, Paul's message spoke to this nagging feeling I had about wanting to do something for people instead of something primarily about products. In fact, that webinar made me realize that lifestyle financial planning was as much about my self-talk as it was about my client talk. You see, in other words, yes, there was some restructuring I needed to do in my financial planning process in order to deliver this service. But I also needed to restructure how I saw myself as a professional. Because up until this point, I knew logically that that was the right way of doing things. But now I believed it too. And this is where things began to get personal. You know, typically, it's only later in life that we realize the significance of things that came much earlier. And once I came across the power of lifestyle financial planning, I looked back at my grandfather's story. And in the most unexpected way, it was this that made me realize what I wanted to do as a financial planner. You see, although my grandfather had suffered through this horrible disease, which robbed him of pretty much all of his physical faculties, perversely, it couldn't rob him of his dignity and independence. You see, the disease robbed him of his ability to walk, but he had the financial stability to get the in-house healthcare support he required so that he could choose to continue living in his own home. The disease robbed him of his ability to talk, but he had the financial stability to continue to provide support to some of my family members who during that period unfortunately found themselves in a time of need. And most importantly, the disease eventually robbed him of his life. But he had the financial stability that meant that he was able to leave a meaningful legacy to his wife, my grandmother, who is now 92 years old, so that she could maintain her dignity and independence too, without having to depend on anyone to support the lifestyle they had worked so hard to achieve. And I imagined if things had been different. What would that have meant to him? What would that have meant to us, his family? I can tell you, it would have been pretty devastating. Isn't it crazy that I've been in this business since 2006, and I'd never connected the dots between what I did professionally with my own family story? Like, how could I have missed it? It's no coincidence that Joe Jordan talks about this in his talks, that Nick Murray writes about this in his books, and that Paul and Mitch teach this in their trainings. This realization spurred me on a mission to make sure that the dignity and independence that my grandfather was able to maintain throughout his old age became available to every single client of mine. And there's no product that does this. There's no product that does it. The only way we can do it is by focusing on the client first, helping them understand the lifestyle they want to achieve and maintain for themselves and their loved ones. This is what we do as lifestyle financial planners. And now, working at a firm that wholeheartedly embraces this way of thinking, I no longer have that feeling that something's missing from my career. My clients, which, as I said to you at the beginning, in the majority are retirement planning clients, are quite comfortable in working with a younger financial planner because they can see the place that I'm coming from. And they very quickly buy into this way of doing financial planning. Also, by introducing a younger financial planner to our existing clients, our firm is showing them our commitment to continuity of service. Because after all, the client knows that I'm more likely to be around for their retirement, as I'm not planning to retire when they do. This is my journey, right up until this point here today. But the reality is, if you're here at Back to Why, you're on a journey too. Whether you're a next-generation financial planner looking towards the next phase of your career, or a veteran lifestyle financial planner looking towards the next phase of your business. So what are the lessons that you can draw from my story today? Well, as I promised you at the beginning of this talk, here are 3 things for you to think about. Number 1, it's about people, not products. We all have the professional qualifications and the technical expertise, which of course we want to show our clients because we've worked so hard to learn it all. But in my journey, I've learned that for it to be meaningful to the client, you've got to have a reason for it to be applied. So a collaborative financial planning process that focuses on life goals first and products later is the way to go. 2, ask more questions, give fewer lectures. Clients don't just want to know how products work. They want to be heard. And I learnt this the hard way. But in actual fact, it's fairly straightforward. Instead of arriving at a meeting ready to tell clients about a product or a solution, just ask them some good open-ended questions and then listen to what they have to say. Then, simply sell them on the fact that your role is to connect those dots with their financial plan. 3, understand and believe that what you're delivering to people is about more than just a financial plan. If my story has showed you anything at all, I hope that it's we're in the business of delivering security, fulfillment, dignity, and independence into our clients' lives. And there's no other profession that gets to do this. So take some time and explore your own journey and find your passion for helping people in your own way. Paul mentioned this earlier. We're 500 strong in here, but let's be honest, that's still relatively a small community. But together, we can make people see that financial planning is about much more than a product delivery system. Together, we have the opportunity to make this into one of the most meaningful professions of the 21st century. Thank you. You've got to take a selfie with these folks.
Well said. You can do a selfie.
That's all right.
Get in the middle. He wants to do a selfie. He's a millennial.
It's a beautiful crowd, and my parents are going to feel proud. So come on, say hi to the selfie people. Come on. Thank you. Thanks, Paul.
Okay, guys. I couldn't have said it better myself. Well done, Amyr. That was brilliant.